morning, everyone. How are we feeling? Good? Great, still energy from the party like yesterday? All right. So I'm super happy to be here with you today. Thank you so much for being here. When I was walking over here, I was thinking something that Foo Fighters singer said when he was giving a concert in Athens. He said that I'm feeling like I'm performing in front of a wall of people. So now I know what he means, seeing everybody. But so let's dive right into it. So this very fancy title of my session has a very underlying question underneath. Why? So today we're going to talk a lot about the why behind why we do what we do. We will solve a lot of why questions. We will not go to answering what is the meaning of life and other philosophical questions. So otherwise will be explained. But maybe I should introduce myself. Hello everyone. My name is Emy. I will introduce myself a little bit to tell you what I do, and I'm sure you will have a question afterwards. Why am I here? Because, big disclaimer, I'm not a gamer. I don't work in the gaming industry. I have no experience with anything, creating a game, or anything regardless like that. I'm not part of this world. So yeah, why am I here? Why did they let me in? I hope that I'm not going to be kicked out, but what I do, I'm training people. I'm a facilitator, I'm a trainer, and I work in learning and development. What this means is that I help people to tap into their soft skills, so how they can communicate better, how they can build better teams, how to lead teams, how to work in a project. So a lot of the how we do things better, basically. So what this has to do with why am I here today is because of this intersection. So if we take the games, and of course we have spent a lot of decades learning from games, because games basically teach us motivation and engagement. So there's a lot to learn in my industry from games, and the synergy I found very fascinating. So right in the middle of games and learning and development stands gamification. So this is what I have been doing for the last few years. I'm trying to add gamified elements, things that we can learn from games to motivate and engage employees in a company. And I believe that there's also a lot that the world of gaming can learn from learning and development, mainly because there are a lot of psychological principles that go into how we keep players engaged, and actually, in essence, why we do what we do in our daily lives. So what are we going to see here, and why you are here, hopefully, is to learn a little bit of theory, but I promise you will be the interesting part, not the boring part that we see in university that we sleep. So this is the essence of understanding the player engagement and why we stay engaged in games and why we drop out of others. And then we will also have more of the practical side, so how you can use all of these principles in your jam and also in your later career. Before we start, I always like to start with a little bit of expectation management. And the bigger disclaimer is that I don't like the sound of my own voice, so I don't want to be the only one speaking. I'm going to ask you questions. I still want to hear from you. I still want you to participate. At the end, I will also leave some time, hopefully, for questions. But I will also ask some of the examples from games so that we can connect what I say here with where we see that in the gaming world. So here I need your help. And yeah, let's start. So I want you to think about something. Think about a time where you were just fully engaged in a game. Like hours went by, you were still hooked. Can you remember of a game like this that you really were all in, not thinking about anything else? Do you have an example in mind? If you have, raise your hand, of a very engaging game that you really, stuck with it. Okay, think about that example. And now let's go a little bit deeper. Think about what was it about that game that kept you engaged? Was it the story? Was it the atmosphere, the mechanics? Maybe because your friends told you that you should play, that you were playing all together? So let's reflect on that a little bit. And then on the other side, can you remember of a game that you just dropped out, that you quit? something that you started and then days, hours, or weeks later you just quit. And again, think about why you quit. Was it frustrating? Was it too easy? Was it too difficult? So these are all of the questions that I want to answer here today. Because the whole point of having this presentation is to understand what keeps us engaged and how to use these principles to intentionally make a jam or a game later on that really keeps players motivated. So why games are so engaging is because they tap into a lot of our core human needs. They also do something to our brains. When we play a game, we release dopamine, and dopamine is that chemical in our body that keeps us motivated and engaged, and we want to do more of it. They also help us to escape from reality. It's also a social thing. We play with friends, we play with people. And also we play because we want to get better at something. This is also related to skills mastery. So a lot of these stuff we will also have, we can understand if we dive deeper into the theory. And the first principle that I wanted to show you in the theory part, and disclaimer here, I will try to make it interesting and engaging as well, but I know it's theory, so I will describe a little bit of what it is. I will give you the fancy titles, and then we can make it very practical, so bear with me here. So, if we start being a little bit scientific, great experiences, whether in games or in real life, are designed because they want to tap into our core human needs. And this is what the self-determination theory has. Because there are three elements that a lot of good games and engaging games use. The first one is that they are relatable. This is the social element. We play because we want to play with people. We play because we want to connect with others. We play because our friends told us that there's this cool game and we want to also try. So having that relatedness is basically because we're social beings, and the feeling of being part of something, collaborating, keeps us engaged. Then we have the autonomy. Autonomy is the freedom of choice. We want to do something because we can explore, we can create, we can make our own decisions, and it also gives us self-direction. So having that autonomy and to approach the challenges our own way is also something that keeps us motivated. And lastly, we have the feeling of competence. This is related to skills and mastery. We do something because we want to feel effective and we want to feel capable. We want to stay engaged into it because we become better and better, and we want to perfect our own skills. And this is also something that we see also in tougher games. Tougher games, there's a fine balance between being too difficult or too easy, but when it hits the spot, we stay engaged because we want to overcome challenges as well. Then, we have also a theory about player types, because not everybody will be engaged in the same way in your game. We have different types, and we have four distinct ones that we will explore here. First of all, you have the socializers. The socializers are all about social experiences. Think about World of Warcraft, for example. These players thrive on relationships or shared experiences. You're part of something. Whether it's organizing a raid or building a village in Animal Crossing, you want to be part of something. So these players are engaged because of the shared experiences. And this is where we have the multiplayer games as well. Then you have the killers. The killers thrive on competition. They want to beat other players, that's why they stay engaged. They are the people who want to dominate, who want to compete with others, and they really like this element of competition in a game. Then you have the achievers. These people are what we call completionists. They thrive on exploration. They want to get to know everything about your game. They want to explore all levels. They want to unlock every achievement, collect any item, and basically they are staying there because they want to complete all the challenges. And then you have the explorers, who are all about discovery and curiosity. And this is where they want to solve mysteries, they want to discover secrets, they want to piece together different parts. It's also about uncovering the unknown and also putting the story together yourself. Then we have the four keys to fun. Because of course, we enjoy games differently as well. So you have 4 types. The first one is the hard fun. This is all about challenge and mastery. It's about the thrill of overcoming challenges, and it's like when you train for a marathon, right? It's like very painful and very hard, but you really enjoy the process of becoming better and having that reward at the end when you complete your goal. Here we see games that really push us to the limits, and we feel accomplished when we overcome obstacles. On the other hand, you have the easy fun. This is about exploration. This is where the joy of exploration and creativity comes into the picture, because the games are not about difficulty, but maybe about the exploration, the fun, the joy of discovery. Then you have the serious fun. And these experiences are still fun, but they also give us a lasting impact. It's where we have, for example, a very compelling storyline that makes us think about the world, maybe have some philosophical impact as well. It really stays with us after playing, and also challenges you with moral dilemmas or tough decisions and some emotional weight. Still fun though. And then you have the people fun, which is all about the energy of shared experiences. So when you do something together, or when you have a collaboration with another player in the game, that's also where the fun comes along. One more thing about the flow theory. So the flow theory is all about where you are so immersed into an activity that you don't really realize that you're actually doing it. It's actually like being in the zone. And how do we actually get players to be in the zone is when we have the difficulty level matching the skills level of the player. So if you make it too easy, people will be bored, because then there's no challenge into it. If you make it too hard, then you will make your player anxious, because they cannot match the difficulty. So what you want is to gradually increase the difficulty as the player improves to have that flow state. All right, a lot of stuff, a lot of information so far. So we talked about the flow theory, we talked about the 4 keys of fun, we talked about the different player types, and we also talked about the self-determination theory with relatedness, autonomy, and competence. So there is one framework that gets everything into the picture and basically summarizes everything into 8 key motivation drivers. And this is what is called the octalysis framework. It was developed by Yu-Kai Chao, which is a very renowned author in the gamification world. And he was also a very big gamer in his youth. So he actually took all of these learnings from the game and developed a framework that summarizes the 8 core drives behind why people do what we do and why they're motivated to keep doing it based on the games. So understanding these games will also help you to basically see what are the different motivators behind why people can still play in your game, both intrinsically, because they feel something that they want to do it themselves, and extrinsically, which is also something about outside pressures. So let's start with the first one. The first core drive is called epic meaning and calling. This is the motivation where you want to do something because you feel that you're part of something greater than yourself. You're contributing to a purpose. Like, think about why people write in Wikipedia. They don't get anything out of it. It's an open, free website, but still people feel that they are contributing to the knowledge, let's say, purpose, and they contribute to editing the pages, adding pages, and all of that, or any open source project. So having that, being part of something bigger or having like a higher purpose, also motivates us to keep doing something. Then we have the core drive of development and accomplishment. And this is where people do something because they love the feeling of progress. Then you see people leveling up, unlocking new gear, mastering new skills. And it's all about the feeling of growth and achievement. And that keeps people engaged. So if we think about, let's say, Duolingo. Duolingo is very popular because the more you learn, the more you earn points and you uncover new levels and you get better at it. So people want to stay engaged in this game. Then you have the empowerment of creativity and feedback. Here we have 2 distinct elements because people want to stay motivated in something because they can create something, they can build something, and immediately see feedback on what they created so they can iterate. So this is where we want people to get creative, they want to experiment with different mechanics. And also this is why Legos are so popular, because you build something and then you can immediately see what you have built, and then you can iterate and adjust based on what you want to create as a structure. Then we have the feeling of ownership and possession. This is why people, the motivation here is because you want to build something. So you want to, you develop a strong attachment to the game because you accumulate wealth, you maybe have a lot of virtual goods, or you can customize your avatar, your profile, and the more you make it your own, the more likely it is that you will stay engaged in the game. So for example, let's say when you create your profile online, then you can customize it, you can add pictures, you can add different information about yourself, and the more you stay in it, the more you want to develop and make it your own. So that's why you keep going back to it. Then you have the core drive of social influence and relatedness. And this is also coming back to the feeling of relatedness that we saw in the first theory, because people are social creatures. They want to be part of something valid, they want to have something, some sort of connection with the others. And here we see two different elements. The first one is that people want to do something because somebody else is doing it, or they want to do something because someone else is better at it and they want to match it. So if, for example, you hear about a new book or a new series or something new that people are doing, you're more likely to stay engaged with it because also other people are doing it, and then you can come back and talk about it, and you have that shared experience. For example, if we see LinkedIn, we also have this thing called professional networking. So you see a lot of people gaining certifications or updating their career. So you're more likely to do the same because you want to be part of it. Then we have the core drive of scarcity and impatience. And here what we see is examples of limited events or limited offers or anything that is likely to go away soon. So what motivates people is that feeling that you cannot get something forever, so you have to act now. So this is also a motivator because people feel like there's artificial barriers to getting what they want. So if you see any flash sale or deals in Amazon, people are more likely to engage in that moment because they don't want to miss out. Then we have the seventh core drive, next to last, which is all about unpredictability and curiosity. Our brains are wired to love surprises. We are fascinated by the unknown. That's why we keep reading a book or keep watching a film, because we really want to see what's in the end. So if you don't know what's going to happen, you're more likely to stay engaged with it because you think that you will think about it often. And this is also the core drive behind why we engage in lottery, because we don't know what's going to happen. So we keep playing in the feelings of maybe we win, maybe we will not. But that still is getting us hooked. And lastly, we have the eighth core drive, which is all about loss and avoidance. This is where we see people are motivated to stay engaged into something because they don't want to lose, or they want to avoid negative consequences. Whether it's about losing progress, missing out on what you have already built, it can also be losing previous work. So here is basically on a larger scale that you don't want to also to admit that you are losing. So you will stay connected to it because you don't want to quit. So we talked about all of them, so let's bring them all together. And here is where I want your help, because I want us to connect all of these core drives with one game or examples of games that you have. So let's start with the first one. So the first one is the epic meaning and calling. The drive behind doing something because you're part of something bigger. You are the chosen one. You are saving the humanity from something, or you're part of something bigger than yourself. Which game comes to mind here? Yeah, you can just say it out loud.
Mass Effect?
Yeah? Yeah?
Helldivers 2 also has a galactic war for all players to engage in.
Mm-hmm. All right. You can just shout it out. World of Warcraft, yeah? Perfect. All right, so a lot of examples. This is also a core drive of staying connected to a bigger purpose. Let's go to the second one, about development and accomplishment, the motivator to level up, to improve, to achieve mastery. Let's hear some examples.
Mario Kart. Minecraft.
Yeah?
Skyrim.
Pretty much any fighting game.
Super. Nice. Good examples, all of them. Then we have the third one. The third one is about empowerment of creativity and feedback. Here we want to see the drive of improving someone's creativity, adjusting through feedback, creating something, building something. Minecraft, very good. That was what I had in mind as well. What else?
Satisfactory.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. Good, nice. So you see there is a lot of examples, so all of these drives are already happening in games or else. Then we have the ownership and possession, which is possession. This is the drive to collect, to accumulate wealth, to organize. What examples can we think here?
Victoria, Pokemon. Valheim. Minecraft.
Yeah.
Crusader Kings.
Yeah, super. Then, fifth drive, social influence and relatedness. The drive to collaborate, the drive to compete, the drive to be part of a social shared experience.
Minecraft. World of Warcraft.
Most MMOs.
Nice, good. Then let's go to the sixth one, which is scarcity and impatience. This is the drive where we obsess over what we see but cannot have.
Yes, again.
All right, all good examples. And seventh, unpredictability and curiosity. This is the drive where we crave what is unknown, unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen.
Attack on Titan. The Lamp.
Mm-hmm.
The Ace Attorney series.
Yeah? Great. Super. And the eighth one, loss and avoidance, the drive to avoid what is undesirable or changing one's behavior.
Stock market. Gambling.
All right. Well, thank you so much. All of these examples, I believe, are very good. I don't know most of them, but I believe you. So you see that there are a lot of examples out here to describe all of these core drives. And of course, not every game has all 8 of them, but there are some, at least components in some behaviors or in some mechanics that we see in games. I will give you some examples as well of different games, and then we can also move on to some more classification of these drives. So as we see here, for example, in Farmville, there are, all of these core drivers are into play, but in different intensities, as we see. So for example, we see that the element of predictability is quite low, and there's not really higher call or meaning because you're just being a farmer. But there is a lot of avoidance and scarcity and ownership drives into play. We also see the social pressure. So these are also some of the core drives that can come also combined in this game. And also if we see the examples of Candy Crush, we see also a little bit of more balance here between all core drives besides having a higher meaning. But we do see that all of these core drives can happen simultaneously, but there are a few considerations that we need to make. So if we go back to the original framework, there is a classification between having white hat and black hat motivations. And the white hat motivations are the first 3, and this is all about intrinsic strategies, intrinsic rewards that basically empower us. These are the motivators that makes us feel good. They make us feel empowered and accomplished, and this is also the motivators that you want to have if you want to have long-term engagement and motivation. These are more likely to last. So, for example, we can think about Spotify Weekly. All of these playlists that they have on a weekly basis, we feel that we're being understood and the algorithm knows us and we don't have to look for music. So it's all about having this sense of empowerment and sense of accomplishment that makes us feel good. On the other hand, we have the black hat motivation. The black hat motivation are using extrinsic triggers. So things like FOMO or creating this urgency or when we don't want to miss out on something. These motivators are strong, but they can feel also a bit manipulative. So the players here feel better if they quit than if they stay. The thing here is that it's not necessarily bad. You just have to use them in moderation, otherwise you risk that your players will feel that they are overused. What you want to see here is that Black Hat can also create engagement in the short term, so it's a very good strategy to get people in the game, but if you want them to stay and feel good about staying, then you go back to White Hat motivations. And it's also key where to use what. And another classification that we see is the classification of right brain and left brain. When we see the right brain is all about more intrinsic motivators, again, it's more about creativity and social expression and social aspects. So it taps more to the creative brain, and the other one is more about the logic. So it's more about calculations and ownership. The left brain are more extrinsic motivation, and again, right brain is more intrinsic motivations. Intrinsic motivation, just to also understand the classification here, anything intrinsic is much more likely to last. Anything extrinsic, because it's based on outside parameters, it's not likely to last. So if you want to have something long-term, you want to stay with the intrinsic motivation, which is left brain and white hat. But there's also another classification here, because this framework is just so complex, I love it. There's a classification of where do you want to do what in which stage. Because this framework also recognizes there are 4 stages in a player's journey. And these are discovery, onboarding, scaffolding, and endgame. And it's very important to also understand that you cannot just use one drive throughout the game. You need to understand why people come, why they stay, why they want to quit afterwards, and how they can come back if they have tried everything in your game. So let's start with the discovery phase. The discovery phase is the hook. What gets people to learn about your game? Maybe they see it in the App Store or they see it on Steam. So this is all about getting that person interested. They don't necessarily have to do anything with your product just yet, but they're just interested in seeing what is there. So this is where you want people to understand why they would even start the journey. And you can use some techniques here, like something eye-catching, like something about your presentation, something about your visuals. Anything that doesn't really require a lot of attention or a lot of understanding from the user or from the player. They just want to have a very compelling description to go there. And then this phase is over when your player has actually engaged with your app. They have downloaded, they have signed up, they have created a profile. And if they do that, then they move to onboarding. Onboarding is all about where you get to know all of the different rules and mechanics of your game. This is when the users are fully equipped and ready to take the journey on their own. So the questions here is, once they are in, do they understand the value? Do they understand the purpose? Do they understand the game? And also, do they understand the value? So once they have understood all of that, then they move to scaffolding. And this is all about basically playing out the game. This is the regular journey of repeated actions towards a goal. And here, what you want to see is that how do people stay engaged over time? What do they, this is the core of your experiences. This is where you keep all of the users engaged because they are doing something again and again and again. And this phase is over when a player has engaged with all potential actions in a game. when they have just seen everything and done everything, and then they move to the end game. And the end game is how do you retain your veterans? And this is something that is quite overlooked, but if you think about it, if you also focus on that stage where people have done everything and seen everything, how do they still keep them engaged? Because if you do, then you have the biggest community of ambassadors, people who are advocating for your game, people who are bringing new users because they say, oh, this game is so amazing. So if you also, this is also the best source for monetization, because you want these veterans to stay engaged. So, from a motivation standpoint, we want to also understand what is the motivation from the very beginning to the very end of playing a game. And now we have seen all of the different classifications and all different applications of this framework. Let's put it into application. So, there are a few things that I would like to give as an advice here, and it's mainly about applying these concepts to your jam or to a game that you will develop later on, because this section is, of course, has a lot of importance, because the main concept here is how do you intentionally design for engagement. The first part, before we dive into the different steps, is to actually take a moment to map out your process, to map out the process of yourself and also of your team. How do you actually design for engagement? Do you design for engagement? What are the different steps? Do you start with a mechanic? Do you start with a feeling? Do you start with a story? So take a moment to also understand how do you actually develop your idea. And also describe that process to your team. Maybe you want to have the same process in the team, or you can also learn from other people's processes. And then you want to have, in the brainstorming phase, you want to have a 3-step analysis if you want to design for engagement. The first one is, who is your player? Think about the 4 different types of players: the killers, the socializers, the explorers, and the socialists. So if you want to engage different kinds of players, then you also need to tailor for that. So if you want to engage the killers, you want to have a lot of competitive elements in your game, otherwise they will get bored. If you want to engage explorers, you need to have a lot of unknown elements so that the people can discover. So who is your player? Who are you designing for? The second part is what will keep them engaged. So what is the psychological motivators that keeps them motivated to engage in playing? Do you want to have the feeling of autonomy there? Do you want to have some level of competence? Do you want them to level up? Do you want them to stay engaged because they are accumulating wealth and they can then also build something with that wealth? So you can use different core drives for this as well. And the last part of this 3-step analysis is what kind of fun are you delivering? Do you want to go for the serious fun, which is like leaving an impact on the gamer's experience? Do you want to have easy fun, which is something like a shared experience? Do you want to have the hard fun, which is all about overcoming obstacles and building your mastery? So what do you want to design for? And once you're done with this analysis, there's going to be one nice statement that will eventually, hopefully, come out of this. And this one looks kind of like this. So if you want to create, let's say, a statement, an engagement statement in this part of your process, it will look like this. In our game, players will stay engaged because this motivator drives them to do this action, leading to this reward. Quite straightforward. And think about it as your jam's mission statement. Then, as you go on, one of the biggest mistakes in this kind of processes, either it's a jam or any project that is very short-lived, is that you tend to do a lot and you want to do everything. And of course, there's a lot of core drives here that you can capitalize on, but more features does not equal more engagement. Either way, you need to be strategically conscious about why you put this core drive in this part of the game, because you want to motivate this player. So even if you use 2 or 3 of them, it's perfectly fine for this kind of project. If you then want to go on a fully fledged game, then of course you can use all of the drivers as you can see, but in 48 hours, don't try to do too much. It's all about having the right mechanics rather than tons of mechanics here. Then, when you playtest also for engagement. And here you don't want to just ask, is our game fun? Of course, you want to also ask the question, does our game work? But when you design for engagement, you also want to ask yourselves questions like, where do players feel engaged? Do they feel engaged in the beginning, but then they drop off? Or do they stay engaged throughout? Then you want to also answer the question, do your players naturally learn your mechanics? Or do they get frustrated while learning? And lastly, you want to also ask yourselves, what kind of emotions do we want our players to feel? Do they want them to feel a sense of accomplishment? Do they want them to feel engaged? Maybe have that sense of flow? Do you want them to feel joy? So what kind of feelings do we want to evoke? And here is basically not to just build only a complete game, but to test whether your core triggers, your core motivators, also do the work. And also engage people to have that flow state that we talked about. So, the final checklist will look like this. First of all, does our core loop match our intended motivators? Second, are our players staying motivated in all of the 4 stages? Discovery, onboarding, scaffolding, endgame. Third, do we have the right balance between white hat and black hat motivation? Intrinsic versus extrinsic motivations. Good motivators versus, not that good motivators. And did play testers stay engaged throughout, or did they get bored and frustrated? And here you want to end up in a statement that looks like our game engages the players by using motivator 1, 2, and 3 to create a compelling challenge, exploration, or social experience. So, key takeaways. And this is the too long didn't read or listen or see. Maybe you just slept throughout and this is the moment that you wake up. So if you just did, welcome. These are the things that I want you to walk away here from. The first one is that engagement is intentional. It doesn't just happen. It can happen in the beginning for various reasons that you didn't design for, because going into a game has a lot of factors. Maybe your friends talk to you about it, maybe it's something that you want to try because you read a good review. There's a lot of external influences there as well, but once they're in the game, it's all in your hands, and you can take control of how the player can stay engaged and motivated throughout. The second one is that there's a framework called octalysis framework developed by Yukai Chao that gives a very structured framework and way to design for engagement. So look it up. Third one, player psychology sometimes matters more than mechanics, because this is the moment where you want your players to really, really stay engaged in that. Fourth, you want your scope to be realistic. Test engagement early and iterate. And always consider the 4 player phases. And with all of that said, I would like to really, really thank you for coming here, and these are also some of my contact details if you want to reach out. This is also the octalysis framework QR code if you want to look it up. And I think we still have time for some questions, but thank you so much for being here and for being such a great audience.